living in Jennings, I went to a school called OLI. And I can only imagine that I had an amalgam of Southern accents from the various places I had lived. So I got enrolled into a speech impediment class. Yeah, that didn't fly for long, so I transferred schools and went to ASH, and then I shortly moved to New Iberia. It was when I was 13 that when my mom was diagnosed, and it was then that I made the decision to switch schools and come here to ESA. And I'm really glad that I made the decision to come here. It was really the first big decision that I got to make on my own. I love the school, I love the people, and I love the environment. And I know that if I went anywhere else, my mom's death would have, and going through chemo would have been fundamentally different for me. My life really changed at 13. It was really then that I had to grow up, but my growing up, I feel, had nothing to do with my mom's illness making me more self-sufficient or independent. Rather, I feel my growing up is entirely in credit to her, and she's entirely responsible for the person I have become and the person that I will become. And having seen what she went through and her will to live, I just really admire and love her for it, and it'll forever make me want to be a better person. My mom was a strong person, and she was always a strong person, and a strong person till the end. But I like to think of it as a family trait. My mom growing up used to say that we lived in a Walmarty. I only later learned that it was something she adapted from her own family. Her mother was a short little Italian woman, and apparently in the Italian household, the woman is the supreme decision maker. I never really knew my grandmother because she had died of cancer when I was 2, but I always grew up with stories of her and felt like I really knew her. She too was a strong woman, and in a time before feminism had really kicked in. My aunt likes to tell this story that always makes me really proud about how when she was a nurse, it was tradition for when the doctor walked in that the nurse would give up her chair. And she said to Eileen, a fellow nurse, "Do not ever give up your chair. You have earned the right to sit in that chair." And that story has always made me really proud. My mom and my aunt would never take anything from anyone. So my family has really strong women, but I feel bad for my dad, the sole male in our family. At the time, he lived with my mom, me, my aunt. All of his staff are women. All of his patients are women. All of the animals are women. Except for his one cat, but his sexuality's always been questionable, so he doesn't know that. But we think he turned out all right. So I've explained how my mom was a strong person, but now I'd like to explain how my aunt is equally a strong person. You lost your mother, your husband, and your sister, and your dog. And I know you're going to think I'm blowing smoke up your butt. But you're the most patient person I have ever known, even with your road rage drinking and smoking. You have more patience than anyone, and as a nurse, your nature is to fix things, and you give people the benefit of the doubt, whereas I would much rather write them out of my life and be done. You always like to tell this story that always makes me feel really bad. And I always feel bad that you were emotionally abused by a 2-year-old. You were babysitting one night, and my parents were gone, and we were sleeping in their bed, and I turned over to you. The minute I heard the car in the garage, that they had come home, I turned over to you and I said, "Go now. Mommy's home." I just wanted you to know that I'm glad be here, I'm glad that you could, and that I would never try to kick you out of the bed again. And besides, it's not like my weak self could if I wanted to. Eileen, Ian, you are my best friend, and I can't imagine life without you. Growing up, you have always been there, and I know when I go off to college, that's the way it'll stay. Unless, of course, my roommate, as you said, tries to kill me. And in my Socratic dialogue, I quote, "Your roommate is going to kill you because you're a slob, a thief, and a bad liar." I wanted to end this portion of my chapel before I get to the shoutouts with a quote by Fleetwood Mac, one of my favorite bands, from the song Landslide, which is also my senior quote. "Well, I've been afraid of change because I've built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, children get older, I am getting older too." I think high school, at least for me, is all about dealing with change. Not all change is great, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and sometimes for the better. Okay, shout-outs. Coach Rose, you were the first faculty member I met at ESA. I met you at an ESA or 8th grade orientation, and I'm never going to forget this one day. You were walking by Miss Sydney's office, and there was that thin little tree, and for just a moment, you stood behind the tree and disappeared, and were completely camouflaged when some 6th graders were walking by, and you just stood behind there, and you grabbed the top of the tree, and there was some rain, and you just shook it. And it came down on all the 6th graders, and they were like, "Ah!" And you just kind of stood there laughing. I think that was the funniest thing I think I've ever witnessed, and complete abuse of power. Coach Becky, God bless you. Was not a volleyball player. I think the one time I managed to successfully block a ball was when the other team went to serve and I got hit with the ball and thereby blocked the ball. So thank you for the experience of being on a real sports team. I really appreciated it. Mr. Wood, you are so sarcastic. It is very rare that you meet genuinely sarcastic people. And you managed last year to put on every single one of my comments. Scarlett silently put forth a good effort. I just wanted to let you know I appreciated the dig. I really enjoy your class. I find you very amusing, and your passion for what you do is really inspiring. Mr. Doran, I also liked having your class, and I enjoyed discussing what we were reading with you. And most often, pretty much all the time, arguing with you over every single one of my English papers. Thank you for making me a stronger writer. Ms. Cunningham, I was glad to be in your Globe Trek group. I couldn't have asked for a more fun person to be with. And I appreciate that you understand that I'm not a math person. So for that reason, you get me to work the math calculator every single time in class. You like to watch me squirm, but I can appreciate your sixth sense of humor. So now I'd like to thank all the little people. Mr. Chrysler. You were just not right. I am so disappointed that I did not get to know you until my senior year. You are so funny, and you tease me like a family member would. Thank you so much for being my college counselor and at times family counselor. I wouldn't have been nearly successful if it hadn't been for you. There's one other I'd like to thank someone, but he's not here. Mr. Myler. Unfortunately, the devil went down to Georgia. Mr. Myler I really miss having him on campus.